Hello everyone, I'm Jordana Van of Ravenlight Holistic Healing, home of the most comprehensive animal totem and spirit guide information on the web, and welcome to Praying Mantid as a spirit guide. I actually have two Praying Mantid videos, Praying Mantid as a totem and Praying Mantid as a spirit guide. This is the video that you want if Praying Mantid is suddenly showing up everywhere and you'd like to understand what that means. If instead you've had a long-term interest in praying mantids or you have a history of experiences with them, you'll want to watch my Praying Mantid as a totem video, a totem being a lifelong teacher as opposed to a temporary guide. And if you'd like further clarification about the difference between a totem and a spirit guide, I have a video about that too, called Understanding the Difference Between an Animal Totem and an Animal Spirit Guide, which you can also find on my channel. Also, if you enjoy my work, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Subscribing is one of the best ways to support the creation of more videos. As a writer, and ultimately these videos are really freaking big writing projects, there's nothing more personally motivating than knowing that there are people out there who are eager to hear what you produce next. And lastly, if you've always wanted to work with me but you missed your window the last time, I'm now offering a limited number of one-off sessions each month. These are available to new clients only, and at this moment only to U.S. residents, though I do intend to return to seeing international clients in the future, so stay posted. For more information, including descriptions of the sessions that I offer, the cost of each, and how to schedule, please visit my website, www.ravenlightholistichealing.com, and click on the Sessions tab. Don't email me directly to ask for this info because I will just direct you back to the site. So, we're going to begin with some name clarification. The reason that this video is on Praying Mantid and not Praying Mantis is that while mantis can be correct, mantises are a specific genus of the order Mantidae, or Mantids. Mantids as a whole are distinguished by their trademark raptorial forelegs, which mimic the traditional prayer posture, and it is the group as a whole about which we will be speaking today. So while a mantis is a mantid, not all mantids are mantises. Got it? So let's talk about Praying Mantid as a spirit guide. We're going to begin with something that may seem a bit silly, but sometimes spirit guide messages are almost laughably obvious. That doesn't make them any less important. You may know that mantids inspired the northern praying mantis style of Shaolin Kung Fu. If you've been interested in Kung Fu or in any other form of martial arts, or if you've simply been looking for a new physical activity to try, Mantid would tell you to investigate martial arts. Sometimes it's really that simple. Now, we're going to move on to another readily apparent but more complicated message. Praying mantids are named for their habit of sitting utterly still in a posture of prayer. While they will, after a period of observation, move themselves into position to grab their prey, most are still what are known as sit-and-wait predators. Rather than chasing their prey, they blend in, wait silently with those razor-spined arms hinged in their signature prayer pose, and at that perfect moment, they reach out faster than the naked eye can see and they grab their target. It's actually one of the fastest strikes in the animal kingdom. And they don't just prey upon insects. Even as far back as 2nd century China, people have been impressed by the boldness of mantids, who just don't seem to be aware that they are bugs. Most predators prey down, meaning that they target creatures smaller and or weaker than themselves. Mantids, on the other hand, sometimes prey up. The Chinese mantid, which is invasive in the United States, successfully captures and devours hummingbirds, snakes, frogs, fish, young mice, turtle hatchlings, and other animals that could, if the mantid strike were not so perfectly timed and were it not so perfectly engineered to keep hold of the prey as it struggles, turn the tables and kill the mantid instead. When taken together, the mantid's prayer posture and its extraordinary boldness and success as a hunter symbolize using forms of prayer to attain success beyond the exceptionally limited imagination of the average human. There is an indescribable bounty available to those who learn how to open themselves up to receiving the impossible and to moving fearlessly when the moment is right, though it's important to keep in mind that this treasure will look different to each person. Mantid may well be telling you that something wondrous is within your grasp, but you have to prepare yourself to receive it. How do we do this? We pray, but not in what most of us would consider the traditional fashion. This isn't folding our hands, closing our eyes, and imploring God to give us something we want, all of which is done in the belief that if we only do it convincingly enough, or if we are worthy enough, God will hear and change his plan. Whatever you ultimately perceive God to be, this isn't exactly how it works. The universe is omnipotent. It knows and sees and accounts for everything. It has a plan, a perfect plan, a plan whose complex intricacies are wholly beyond our grasp. And it is not the universe's job to rearrange that plan to suit our desires. Why would it? Our desires come from this pinhole view of the cosmos and our role in it, while the universe sees and knows all that is. And so instead, it is your job to surrender to the existing plan, to the infinite, incomprehensible wisdom of the divine. That is what prayer actually is. Not asking the universe to change things for you, but seeking to be the thing that changes. And once we truly do this, that's when the real magic happens. It always amazes me that when we let go of what we think we need to be happy and let the universe run the show, we tend to discover that what the universe wants for us is exactly what we would have wanted for ourselves if we had been aware that the option existed. But how do we get to the place where we can surrender? In this case, we look to the Mantids' specialized eyes and neck for guidance. Mantids possess enormous compound eyes composed of thousands of light receptors whose concentration is greatest at the center of each eye, meaning that their vision is most precise when they're looking at an object of interest dead on. Because movement is perceived via the peripheral receptors, when the mantid spots moving prey, it turns its head to center the target in its visual field, where it can be seen more clearly. These guys possess the widest neck-turning radius of any insect, up to 180 degrees, allowing them to observe their prey without the need to move the rest of their bodies. This reduces the chance that their prey will spot them before they're ready to pounce. Metaphysically, our eyes and neck are linked to what we will and will not look at. Essentially, to what degree we choose to deeply examine ourselves and our lives and the world around us. What do you allow yourself to see? What do you avoid? Most people avoid quite a bit because looking at it too closely would make them feel things they don't want to feel or force them to make choices they don't want to make. True awareness of ourselves, of others, of situations can be excruciatingly painful and scary. Praying mantids with those large eyes and uniquely flexible necks are not just aware of everything around and behind them, but they can adjust their view so that they can examine objects of interest in detail. Symbolically, this is the difference between being able to see something and making that difficult choice to really look at it, to ask questions, to think critically about it. There's a gaping chasm between these two states of seeing. Now, I do need to put out there that perhaps Mantid's message for you is far simpler than learning how to surrender, which is quite a task, and if so, lucky you. Perhaps you are simply supposed to spend a little quiet time with yourself each day, maybe even in a monastery or a similar establishment, which you would know is the case if you've been feeling interested in visiting one, or if other signs corroborate this. Perhaps it has nothing to do with prayer, and Mantid is only telling you that you've been avoiding looking at something going on in your life. This is similar to one of Owl's most pertinent messages, that there's a truth that you're avoiding, something you have had a feeling about, but you're afraid of what it will mean if you acknowledge it, and that you need to push past your fear and face it. It might not be pleasant, but it will be far easier if you do it now than if you just wait for it to blow up in your face. However, if you're working with the big guns here, meaning that Mantid is teaching you the art of success through surrender, you will likely be doing more than sitting in silent meditation in a monastery, though that can certainly be part of the process. To surrender, we need to understand what keeps us trying to do things in a purely logical fashion rather than letting the divine inspire us to move in the right way and the right time. We need to deeply and honestly examine ourselves. We need to ask ourselves the probing questions and rack our brains for the answers. When the answers don't come, that is when we sit in stillness and wait for insight and feel our feelings. When insight arrives, we assimilate the information and then we begin the process again with that new understanding of ourselves. The process never really stops. Ultimately, all of our striving is geared towards keeping ourselves safe and happy, whatever our personal definitions of safety and happiness may be. The difficulty occurs when we become attached to the belief that safe and happy can only come to us in a specific way. For example, some of us believe that safety and happiness can only be attained through finding another person to take care of us because we don't have faith that we can take care of ourselves. And so all of our attention and energy goes into finding and securing that other, when perhaps our truest happiness, and certainly our safety, could be found through developing confidence in our own power. Or we may believe that safety and happiness can only be found in a mountain of money. Guys, there is nothing wrong with wanting a freaking ton of money. For some of you, happiness really does lie there. But for others, seeking safety and happiness in money can mean that if you attain it, you endlessly fear losing it, or you sell your soul to keep it. In some cases, having money keeps you comfortable enough that you stay in an unhappy situation because you have enough money to make it bearable by constantly distracting yourself. Are you wretchedly miserable? Probably not consciously, but are you living your best life? Heck no. Sometimes being broke is the best gift the universe can possibly give you. Having no other choice, you will take risks you wouldn't have otherwise taken, or you'll face things you otherwise would have avoided. You're listening to me now because I was flat broke and it pushed me to do something I wouldn't have done otherwise. Yay, being broke. My other favorite illusory source of happiness and safety is fame. If we could only become famous, some of us think, we would be set for life. I probably don't need to tell you guys why that is the furthest thing from the truth. As you examine yourself and what you think you need to be safe and happy, you aren't trying to talk yourself out of wanting what you want. There are no bad wants. There is nothing wrong with the desires in and of themselves. And again, they may really be what you're intended to attain. What you're actually looking at is why you want what you want, what you think it will give you. When you do this, you can begin to see how your desires are not necessarily the only source of potential safety and happiness. This allows you to release your attachment to your happiness or safety arriving in just one specific way, a way that hasn't materialized for you because it wouldn't actually make you happy. Let's go back to the money example for a moment. Maybe you obsess over making money because you believe it'll make you happy. And yet, when you look at it, you realize it's not actually money itself that you want, but a situation that you believe must be bought with money that you don't presently have. When you let go of the attachment to money and you open yourself to receiving the situation in another way, things often magically click into place. I have countless examples of this sort of thing occurring for clients of mine, but I think one of my favorites is that of a client who desperately wanted to live in a nice house surrounded by nature, rather than in this tiny apartment with her lunatic roommate. She lived in one of the most expensive areas in the country, and she wasn't making much money at the time. So this wasn't even something that she could remotely afford. If money were the only thing standing in her way of having it, it was never going to happen. After a considerable amount of surrendering, she magically connected with a couple who lived in precisely the sort of house that she wanted. They were gone for most of the year, and they wondered if she would house sit for them. She could have the entire sunny, furnished walkout basement for herself and her cat, with its beautiful patio surrounded by plants and trees and conveniently located to everything she wanted, and she could live there rent-free. And so she did. The universe can pull off some pretty fabulous miracles when we get out of our own way, meaning we stop trying to tell it how we want things to happen for us. Because while the mind, which is attempting to create a specific outcome, gathers what data it can, then guesses and hopes and struggles, the spirit knows, and it moves in peace and ease. When we learn to trust in the universe rather than our limited conception of self and reality, we do the impossible, just as Mantid does when it snatches a hummingbird out of the sky, as morbid as that may be for the hummingbird lovers out there. We connect with desires we never knew we had. We reach for things that conventional belief would consider unattainable, and we take paths to get there that logic could not possibly have foreseen. We confront and we risk and we leap, knowing that we'll land safely. And rather than stressing and forcing, we follow one right feeling, though not necessarily right looking, step after another, and we wind up right where we're supposed to be. When the thing we want arrives, we simply and unhesitatingly reach out and grab it. It may seem to outsiders as though the most incredible of gifts simply landed in our laps, and that we didn't have to work for it at all. But within ourselves, a vast amount of personal preparation, of reflection, prayer, surrender, and at last the inner peace and stillness and confidence that come with it, occurred in order to open us up to its receipt and then move us into position to receive it. Now, I am going to insert an important caveat here. And that is that you can clear away all the limiting beliefs you want. You can open yourself 6 ways from Sunday, but if it is not the right time for something to happen, it won't. Many times in my life, I have experienced the insane magic of letting go of my limiting beliefs only to have what I want fall into my lap almost instantly afterwards, sometimes in under 24 hours. It really is crazy. But there have also been times where I've cleared the way for what I wanted, only to wait and wait and wait and wait some more. When it did at last arrive, it was every bit as amazing as I dreamed. And I could see that a lot of pieces had to be moved into place for it to occur for me in the way that would actually make me happy. This made it easy for me to look back and be grateful for the delay, but while I was experiencing the delay, I can't say that I wasn't sometimes frustrated, sometimes even scared that I couldn't trust the process of the universe. All I can tell you guys is that your miracles are worth waiting for, and if they arrived early, they wouldn't be the miracle you were seeking. So all you can do is get out of your own way to the degree that you consciously can, and then get on with your life, knowing that your good will arrive when it arrives and that it will do so in the form that is best for you. I know it's so much easier said than done, but Mantid is a message that you can do it. The next piece of Mantid's messages may relate to your prayer and surrender journey, or it may be a separate piece of advice entirely. All mantids are solitary creatures, and they're notable for their mutual antagonism. From the moment that they hatch, they will attempt to eat their siblings. And if you put 2 mantids in an aquarium, eventually one of them is going to get eaten. Female mantids often eat the male as part of their mating, though we will cover this part and its separate implications for your relationships in a bit. When mantid is around, it's likely that you need to put your own needs first for a bit, most especially with regard to taking time alone. Sometimes, even when we are normally socially oriented individuals, we need time to ourselves to regain our emotional equilibrium. You may be experiencing an abnormal amount of stress, or you may be spending time with emotionally intense people who are having more of an impact upon you than you realize. Or perhaps you've always struggled with boundaries. Whatever the case, Mantid would suggest that it is not just time to set boundaries to protect your space and alone time, but that you have to be fierce about it. Mantids have strong jaws and a brutal bite. They actually bite the heads off most of their prey. Symbolically, creatures with strong jaws that crush and tear teach us to be blunt and honest in our speaking. If you need time to yourself and Mantid is around, and when Mantid is around, you probably do, tell people that, and then speak up fearlessly if they attempt to intrude upon your alone time anyway. Be rude if you need to. Mantid is not about being diplomatic, but about putting yourself unequivocally first. If Mantid is also teaching you to question yourself and your beliefs in order to surrender to the divine's plan and timing, solitude is especially important. It's difficult to let go of socially accepted belief systems when you're surrounded by people who insist that you are nuts for doing so, which, unless they are an incredibly enlightened bunch, they most definitely will. You can take a cue from Mantids here, who are masters of camouflage. They look like green leaves or dead leaves, moss, sticks, certain flowers, and when amongst the foliage they resemble, they are invisible. This allows them to capture such large prey and to stay safe from predators themselves. If you take a mantid and you put it in surroundings it doesn't resemble, it doesn't matter how great a hunter it is, it's going to be seen before it can strike and avoided accordingly. This, of course, is assuming that it hasn't been spotted and eaten by another predator first. If you want to learn how to connect with happiness, you have to put yourself in a place where people won't see and bother you, where you can relax and quietly focus on doing the deep internal probing necessary to understand and release the limiting beliefs about your life. For some of you, you may just need to minimize your extracurricular socializing for a while. For others, like me, you may also need to put up some electronic boundaries as well. I don't use social media much these days anyway, but if I really need to do a deep internal dive, I stay off it completely. I also turn the audio alerts off of my phone, and I put my phone in a drawer so I don't see the alert icons. I figure that if it's really an emergency, someone will call me, so I leave the ringer on and then I don't check back for texts until evening, sometimes the next day. In our increasingly connected world, just because we are alone physically does not mean that we are in a safe, calming, quiet space. Be honest with yourself about your definition of alone and create and enforce your boundaries accordingly. The Greek word mantis means one who divines, a seer or a prophet. Prophets are those who hear the wisdom of the divine and who speak on its behalf, making them truth receivers and truth speakers. But the term mantis has its roots in another Greek word meaning to be mad. And in ancient Greece, prophesying was sometimes believed to be the result of inspired madness. Today, becoming a seer and experiencing a sort of madness still tend to go hand in hand. We aren't necessarily talking about the kind of madness that leads to a padded room here, though in extreme cases that can happen. To the outside world, there's no definitive symptom or pattern of symptoms that differentiates genuine mental illness from the kind of spiritual awakening a seer endures, unless we're actually looking at blood work or an MRI that shows a physical abnormality. That being said, if you're convinced that you and only you are being given all the answers, and that the way you are being shown is the only way, the right way for everybody, that is a good indicator that you are not on a spiritual journey, but one guided instead by a wounded ego or literal issues with the brain or body chemistry. I have known no few people who were convinced that they were prophets or messiahs, and in one case, the embodiment of the angel Gabriel, and in another, the embodiment of John the Baptist. And instead, they were experiencing either a severe mental and emotional crisis or a physical one. Nonetheless, when you really start to become aware of the profound chasm between what is true and what most of the world accepts as true, and of the incomprehensible complexity of this thing we have collectively decided to call reality, you are usually on the cusp of a doozy of an existential crisis. That's where all your surrender work comes in. Instead of panicking, or more realistically, instead of panicking a lot, you try to take your mind out of the equation and let the universe guide you to the people and resources that will help you reground yourself in a new and more flexible understanding of what is. And you will know that these are the right people because they will feel good for you and they will encourage you to honor what feels right for you, rather than, as I just mentioned, telling you there's only one way and it is their way. You will want to learn from them rather than feeling threatened into doing so or afraid that your life will go wrong if you don't. However, when Mantid is around, the right person is more often than not going to be you. All of your new understandings will come from within and from the resources to which you feel guided. And technically, you're still learning from the people who developed those resources, but it's third hand. And therefore, the real teacher is the part of you that tells you which bits of which resources are right for you and which are not, and when to let some of them go as you evolve. Thanks to pop culture, we do tend to romanticize the seer's journey quite a bit, and we tend to think it's a lot easier and shorter than it really is. In truth, guys, for most of us, it's pretty brutal. Not just because it's so isolating. I mean, it's tough to feel like you're the only one in the vicinity who can see the truth. But because there's no rule book or step-by-step process you can reference to see if you're on the right track. It's like being tossed into the ocean without knowing how to swim, or that there even is such a thing as swimming that would save you. Even the most basic understandings are subject to question. This is the madness. We don't know what is true anymore, and yet we do have definite feelings about what is not true. We question everything constantly, and this process goes on and on and on. We do not just transition all at once into a state of divine awareness. We go through a lengthy journey requiring considerable determination and faith, which will be challenged again and again and again, not just by other people, hence the aforementioned need for isolation, but by our own logic-loving minds. If this sounds like it sucks, it does. If it also sounds thrilling, it is. It is also rewarding beyond words. The gift of navigating the madness and coming out the other side is being shown how to pull back the curtain, which shrouds the mystery of existence. If you're the kind of person who is interested in cosmic truth, and you're not going to be put on a seer's path if you're not, this is the stuff that dreams are made of. You start to grasp the hidden whys of existence, the magic that creates occurrences that look random or accidental. You see that we aren't victims, but participants, albeit predominantly unconscious ones, in how our lives unfold. It is an experience like nothing else. We're going to conclude by talking about Mantids' messages concerning relationships, particularly romantic relationships. Earlier, I mentioned that Mantids are notably antagonistic. You put two together in a confined space and one of them is going to eat the other. One might wonder if Mantids are so aggressive towards each other, how on earth it is that they manage to make more little Mantids. One mantid species, B. borealis, has solved this issue by reproducing asexually, meaning that the female does not need a male to produce young, though all of the young produced this way will be female. In fact, every member of B. borealis in the United States is female for precisely this reason. Other members of the borealis species can produce asexually and sexually, meaning that in some cases a male is not necessary, while in others the male risks life and limb to contribute to the gene pool. Female mantids are considerably bigger and stronger than their male counterparts. That wouldn't be that much of an issue for the male, except for the fact that if the female is hungry, she will eat him during mating, and his comparative weakness and smaller size means there is not anything he can do to stop her. And now we get to the really fun part. If she intends to eat him, she will sometimes bite his head off and eat it once he has mounted her, but before copulation begins, and his headless corpse will still do the deed. Just so we're clear here, the male does not need his head, at least not the one up here, to mate with the female. After the male body finishes its business, she eats that too. It is tempting to impose a moral explanation here. In years past, so-called biologists called the mantid wanton and savage and cruel, condemning it for eating its partner for the sheer perverse joy of it, rather than to satisfy its hunger. However, modern biologists recognize that females do eat their mate out of hunger, noting that leaner females are more likely to eat their mates than well-fed females, and that sexual cannibalism only happens in approximately 30% of matings, rather than being the foregone conclusion that pop science has frequently made it out to be. The ootheca, the egg case that female mantids produce to protect their eggs as they mature, often weighs half as much as the female, representing a considerable investment of energy. It takes a lot of calories for mantids to reproduce, and studies have shown that when a female eats her mate, the resulting ootheca is larger. And while male mantids fly, allowing them to hunt a larger range and therefore consume more prey, female mantids have wings, but they're too heavy to use them. This means that they will tend to catch less prey than their male counterparts in the region. This being the case, if a female is hungry and a meal crawls into her lap, and particularly if she needs the calories to lay eggs, it would behoove her to eat it. It's also important to note that male mantids do not willingly offer themselves up as dinner. Larger, heavier females who are made so by sufficient feedings are approached far more often as sexual partners than leaner females. Basically, the more zaftig females probably aren't hungry, making them safer and therefore more attractive mates. Lean females, when they are approached, are done so with obvious caution and far more slowly. Males are aware that they are dangerous partners and proceed accordingly. If he makes a poor choice and the female grabs him, he will do his best to fight to escape as she eats him. This is not a sacrificial species. So what does all this mean? It's easiest to explain in terms of gender, specifically the gender with which you identify rather than your biological sex. Unlike organized religion or biology, legitimate spirituality doesn't deal in absolutes. And insofar, at least as metaphysical messages are concerned, who and what you feel you are is vastly more important than your actual physical attributes. If you're non-binary, whatever interpretation feels right for you probably is right for you at this time. If you identify as female, Mantid is first and foremost about girl power. Not only do some female mantids not even need a male to do the one thing that for most other species cannot occur without two distinct genders present, but they are humongous compared to their male counterparts. In the mantid world, the female is unquestionably the dominant partner, and thus she is fearless in encounters with the opposite sex. Here, Mantid may be showing you that the most important thing for you to do right now is to project unimpeachable confidence and act like you're the one with all the power, even if you don't truly feel that. Or, Mantid may instead be showing you how much you've wanted to be fearless in your encounters with males. You'll know that this is true for you because it's something you found yourself thinking about a lot. And if it is true for you, the time has come to take some actionable steps towards developing that confidence. Think of a female you admire and consider how you could begin emulating the specific qualities that you most respect. Or speak with her personally if you're able. Many enviably confident females do not start out that way. She may have a specific wisdom to share with you that will help you on your own journey. If you don't find an individual woman inspiring, perhaps there's a character in a book or a movie that you wish you could be more like. If all else fails, look to history, which is rife with courageous women. If we aren't talking about general confidence, but confidence in the bedroom, there are a lot of resources out there to help you in that arena. You can see a sex therapist, you can watch videos, you can read books. I'm sure there are other things I haven't thought of, though as always, be mindful of the nature of the person from whom you are learning to explore such a delicate subject. Not every Tanya, Trish, or Tracy is even remotely qualified to provide advice on this matter. So use a little common sense here, girls. With regard to the female mantid not just being larger and more powerful than her mate, but actually devouring him, there is a caution here as well. If you're female, it may be that Mantid is alerting you to the fact that you are seriously taking advantage of your partner. If you have felt that there is an imbalance of power in your relationship and Mantid shows up, there definitely is. And if you would like the relationship to continue, you need to take prompt steps to remedy this. Otherwise, you may use the other person to the point that they literally cannot give you anymore and leave. It may also be the case that your partner sees you as a female mantid, as someone who will devour him if he gets too close. If your partner is a serious commitment phobe, it's probably because he's afraid you're going to dominate and control him. There is one place in which this kind of imbalance, the female using the male, is something of a necessary evil. Sex and creativity are both located in the same chakra, that being the second or sacral chakra, and the energies involved in sex and procreation are the same as those that drive the creative process. Every creative act, after all, is a birth of sorts, and every birth is an act of creation. A few minutes ago, I mentioned that the ootheca, the egg case which contains the female mantid's young, often weighs half as much as she does, and the larger egg cases and more young are produced when the female eats the male during sex. To produce something so energetically demanding, she needs a lot of extra nourishment. Symbolically, what we are looking at in terms of the creative process is a male serving as a patron of a creative woman. This sort of relationship has a substantial history. Patrons have long supported artists of all kinds so that they could focus exclusively on their creations, which they could not do if they were also forced to work a job to earn income. Here, however, we have a man giving of himself in exhaustive fashion in order to support his artist, either emotionally or physically, even unto the point of bankruptcy. At the end of the day, this may be the only way that the woman's creative act can come to fruition, and no one is forcing him to give the patron everything. Viewed from a moral standpoint, it may appear as though she is using him, but again, he is consenting to being used. Now, if you're a guy and you're in a patron-artist relationship of this nature, Mantid would be a wake-up call. If she uses you up, and she likely will if Mantid is around, you are the one letting it happen. You have to decide if the creative project is worth everything that you have, because that is precisely what the cost will be. So, what if instead you identify as male and you're running into Mantid everywhere? The first possibility is that you have always had some degree of fear around being dominated by women, and the time has come to address that. On the other hand, if you're in a relationship with a woman that you've sensed may be a bit selfish or needy, Mantid would be confirming your feelings. What we're really looking at here are some specific red flags. Is she a bottomless pit of hunger for your attention? Does she always want you to pay for everything or do task after task for her? Does she ask you to go out of your way to satisfy her sexually, and yet when it's your turn to receive, she is disinterested or too tired or has a headache? Do you feel in general that she takes advantage of you? If so, Mantid is letting you know that this is a woman who is not going to give to you anywhere near the way that you give to her. And in fact, she may simply be using you up until you have nothing left. There is also one hell of a caution around sex if you are a guy and Mantid shows up. Female Mantids are literal man-eaters. In human terms, we are talking femme fatales of the highest order. They are alluring in the extreme, so much so that you can find yourself deciding to act against your better judgment where these women are concerned. If you begin to feel that the downstairs brain is the only one doing the talking here, take a step back. This is one of those rare instances where instead of telling us to just let go and flow, the universe is actually instructing you to employ some logic. We cannot guarantee that a relationship will work, and if you try, you're never going to have one. But you can pay attention to overt red flags. Male Mantids approach larger, obviously well-fed females more readily, where they stay away from while considering thinner females, and they approach them more slowly. In the 30% of cases in which they're eaten, it is more likely to be a thinner female who does the deed. So there's a lesson here. Ask questions. Find out if this incredibly sexy woman can take care of herself, if she has what she needs, if she's happy and has a rich, rewarding life. These are the kind of women who are not going to consume you to fill their own hunger because they're perfectly capable of satisfying it themselves. If your potential paramour has some obvious holes in her life, however, she will probably use you up and discard you. Depending on how mind-blowing the sex promises to be, this may be a risk you're willing to take. Most male mantids do manage to survive mating after all, and you might be on the cusp of the most thrilling night of your life. Just do yourself a favor and proceed with caution. So I hope this has given you guys a good idea of how to examine your mantid experiences. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Cheers!